Hello, my name is Nellie Borello, and this is my older adult oral video presentation for Social Work 501. I am going to be talking about my chosen stage, which is Erik Erikson's last stage, which is ego, integrity versus despair. This is the last stage of Erik Erikson's psychosocial framework. This stage represents the elderly adult, ages 70 years and older. This stage further represents how our past can have a great impact on how we view our present. This stage discusses how we envision death based upon our past experiences, whether we have regrets opposed to leaving this earth with integrity and coming to peace with our past and acceptance. Older adults cope with their day-to-day by applying what teaching they have discovered in their younger years to maintain internal and external stability. Next, the experiences with my interviewer, who was my 70-year-old mother, include some major health issues that she has experienced the past 6 months. She also experienced some relationship issues, which was the separation of her and my stepdad. Mom felt that she needed some space. However, she did reunify with him. Mom did experience major depression during that period, not only with the relationship, but she was in denial regarding major health issues that she was having and passing them off as anxiety when she was having other issues. Mom does talk about past regrets that she's had regarding not doing a lot of things that she wanted to do because she felt like she didn't have the support networks from her past and present relationships. Through this process, the positive that has come is she has developed a much deeper relationship with God. Next, we're going to talk about older adults and their focus on extrinsic goals such as finances, success, image, popularity, conformity, experience more anxiety and negativity associated with death. This is what I talked about in my annotated bibliography, and how extrinsic opposed to intrinsic goals really determine our attitude and how we see things. When we focus on things such as success and image and popularity, those adults in their older years don't seem to be as happy, and they have more negativity associated when they leave the earth. Emotionally, Mom suffers from depression and needs medication to help with panic attacks. Her anxiety has gotten considerably worse as her health has deteriorated. Mom did leave her husband at 69 due to not really feeling appreciated, and felt like she was being forced to do things that she physically couldn't do anymore. A lot of badgering regarding, things that, needed to happen. And my mother was taking care of my stepfather and my brother, who has mental illness, when she really couldn't take care of her own needs and her own health at the time. Even though, she left, my mom went through a really bad period of depression, feelings of loneliness and despair. They have recently reunited. But Mom has talked about her past and how she focused more on conformity and appearances and not so much on things that she could have or should have focused on. She did take some of that responsibility for, her relationship failing because she wasn't really healthy at the time, and she, you know, felt deep in her heart that she could have did more in order to promote a better environment and atmosphere. Next, Mom has considered, has suffered considerable depression, regret, worry, thinking about my older brother and how he's going to take care of himself after she's gone. So a lot of her worry and a lot of her depression has to do with the issue of my adult brother and the role that she has taken for the past, 40 some odd years, 48 years, and wondering if he's ever going to be able to take care of himself and hold down a job. Mom was recently diagnosed with advanced stage COPD, anxiety, and she needs oxygen daily just to make it through her days. Throughout these difficult situations, Mom has developed a much closer relationship with God, and she seems to have a calm that has come over her like never before. Psychosocial crisis resolution. My psychosocial crisis as it relates to this stage of my mother's life has much to do with her declining health. Many couples that are married for long periods of time tend to begin having marital problems when faced with serious health problems, like her and my stepdad have been faced with, both of them actually. At one point, that was a problem where my stepdad was had many health issues, and my mother was taking care of all of his needs on a continuous basis. I think my mom's choice to leave was based on her declining health and my stepdad's unwillingness to step it up and do for her what she did for him during his most vulnerable moments of illness. Physically, my mother was just not able to do what needed to be done. And this last year, with all of her health issues, her pace has just come to a stop. She was very active at one point, and I think that also has a lot to do with her feelings of depression and anger and regret, that she should have taken better care of herself, she should have stopped smoking, things that, when you're young, you don't particularly focus on, but as you get older, it does become in the forefront of your mind. This psychosocial crisis brought her to the point of leaving everything that was familiar to her, and also bringing on more depression and anxiety, because when she moved, she was totally displaced. She had, been in the same residence for 20 years, and here she is at 70 years old, uprooting herself and having to move, and just the changes. As we get older, changes become more difficult. Psychosocial crisis resolution. It is thought that those who have a higher level of education are more likely to let their accomplishments determine their actions, behavior, and buoyancies. This stage of cycle development, as we go through infancy to older adulthood, we look back at our lives and things we coulda, shoulda, woulda done differently, and sometimes we think that our choices, were not the best choices, and the choices that we would make as we get wiser. I think at my mother's age, gender, religion, culture, and education have all played key roles in keeping my mother stagnant and with feelings of subjugation. My mom, for the majority of her life, was with, my father, who was extremely controlling. My father came from a staunch Catholic Italian upbringing where, he pretty much had that motto, do as I say, not as I do. My mom worked in the courthouse for 30 years, and women were not even allowed to apply for certain positions. And I can remember as a young girl hearing my mother with feelings of such oppression, because she knew she could do the job and probably do it better, but she wasn't even afforded the opportunity. Mom also chose to stay in 2 marriages where there were always gender issues and control issues. Both of these relationships changed my mother's outlook, her personality, her emotional state. I remember as a kid my mother going from very nurturing to kind to very bitter, even taking it out on people such as, my grandparents, who were very loving and kind, but because my father played, families against each other, and, even with, us kids, and my mother seemed to be turning because of years of abuse, verbal abuse, and years of never really speaking up and being heard. While interviewing my mother, was surprised to hear how she felt she could have accomplished so much more educationally if my father had been more supportive and not so domineering and jealous and monopolizing of her time and her attention. Mom also explained that within the Catholic Church she felt looked down upon because my father was previously married, therefore she couldn't receive communion. She eventually stopped attending Mass altogether. And so did us kids. Psychosocial crisis resolution. The biopsychosocial factors or events that may have inhibited the resolution of the psychosocial crisis included my mother had a lack of social support, psychological stressors relating to her declining health at this stage, along with not a lot of support from her husband. Then also anxiety about her health issues, along with the taking care of my adult brother. She has had depression and anger regarding not being able to perform certain duties that she once was able to do with such ease. I think my mother feels dominated by the male, and years of being controlled has contributed to this mindset, and cultural expectations such as duties women are expected to perform, such as cooking, cleaning, paying bills, and intimacy, have made her have regrets about her decisions. I think now, as my mother looks back and talks about her first marriage and all the regrets she has, she in the beginning had much bitterness, and it was a very derogatory conversation that we always had about my father. Now, I think she is moving more towards acceptance and forgiveness, and moving more into a calmer phase of her life where she does not want to have those feelings, because she realizes that it only hinders her progression in finding that integrity. Erickson's final stage of character building, in addition, these women who have had specific regrets regarding their past clearly had issues with anxiety and depression later in life. Again, relating this back to my mother and her issues regarding her education, her job, where she felt like, due to the gender roles back in the 70s and in the 80s, lower lower pay because of her gender, not being able to apply for a certain position because of her gender. I think through this, my mom has really been able to move towards acceptance and integrity versus despair. I also think that she's expressed much bitterness about her past, but feels by moving into the future and being more self-accepting, coming to that self-acceptance stage, has benefited her. And even psychologically thinking about, that acceptance and kind of moving that bitterness away from her, she realizes that it is much better for her mindset. Continuity theory has helped my mother cope with her day-to-day struggles and come to use strategies such as having help from family members, counseling to get that has got her through difficult times, and a more positive attitude altogether. Mom has started getting out into the community and participating in senior citizens events. She's been going to dances and dinner with my stepdad. She's been going out and hearing, different bands play, which has helped move her into this new stage of acceptance. And again, just more of a peace and calm has come over her. I also feel as though many of her regrets have subsided about her past, and she doesn't talk about that past with such bitterness. And not being able to pursue certain endeavors, of course, she still realizes that she wouldn't have, gotten further in her degree and her education if she could have pursued or if she would have had support. But pursuing those certain endeavors back then has not, and not being successful, does not have the input on her that it once had. Competence and environmental press theory. Older adults adapt optimally when there is a balance between their ability to cope with certain situations in their life and the level of environmental demands that is placed upon them. This too goes back to my mother's, life living in a household where she was expected to perform all these duties, and her health was just not permitting her to do so. So the environmental demands were placed on her. However, she couldn't even cope at the time because of her illness. When older adults experience failing health, they do not always have support networks in place to help them through this transition. This is what my mother experienced day to day for a long time. My mother had to alter her life since she was forced to retire after Hurricane Katrina hit the New Orleans area. These trials and tribulations have brought much complexity into my mother's life, but her resilience to thrive remains. Theory limitations. The older adult, through therapy, chooses to accept their past and rewrite a new, more positive story for the here and now. The idea is to go from despair to a stage of positive change. When my mother was going through these relationship issues, she did seek out counseling, and this helped her tremendously, just being able to go talk to someone and getting a non-objective view. Sometimes when we talk to family, instead of getting that ear that you want to listen, sometimes you just get too much feedback. Continuity theory is based on how older adults try to cope with such issues that impact them later in life, incorporating skills and strategies that are familiar teachings. One thing is we always go back to what's familiar, whether it be good or bad in some instances. Continuity theory emphasizes the role of personality in determining the outcome of older age. This theory limitation, as it relates to my interview with my mother, would be her inability to cope due to her declining health. In addition, when my mother became ill, she was unable to use these familiar strategies or skills, because at the time all she could think about was trying to breathe, which, you know, is one of our basic necessities of life, which she had diminished capacity to perform simple tasks because of her medical issues. And this is the completion of my adult oral presentation. I hope you liked it. Thank you very much.